Hello ladies and gentlemen, nice to see you today. My name is Dustin Cormier and welcome to another episode of How to Rock Astrology. Welcome. Today we are going to be talking about you, Sagittarius rising sign, and what it means to have Uranus transiting Taurus, which is your 6th house. The 6th sign from Sagittarius, that is. You likely have your 6th house cusp there. Even if you don't, in Vedic reckoning, there is still a 6th house vibe and emphasis for Taurus, no matter what, because Taurus is the 6th sign from Sagittarius. So, we are going to be talking about what this transit of Taurus means for you as a Sagittarius. And again, if your 6th cusp doesn't fall there, these vibes, you're going to be meeting these vibes at some point anyway, because as Uranus has been transiting Taurus, it's either past your cusp or it's moving towards the 6th house cusp. So these themes will be relevant to you at some point. And it will relate to Taurus and everything and what Taurus means to Sagittarius. So feel free to check out my video, which I've already done, Uranus transiting Taurus, to find out what Uranus means to everybody as it relates to the sun in particular, because that is definitely a thing, and we'll get into that. Also check out, it also describes what Taurus means to everybody, what Venus means to everybody, because Venus rules Taurus. Now, this transit might be a dull roar for you, Sagittarius, because it's in your 6th house, but I still recommend you watch this video because it's going to help you unloosen some of the mud in the wheels of your vehicle, especially if you have significantly placed planets in your 6th house. Then this period is going to help you unbuckle the meaning of that planet and how it can help you express your sun, because that's what Uranus really does at its essence. It's all about the sun. We're going to talk a little bit about that, but first thing I want to say, it's just a few pointed statements of this whole situation for you as a Sagittarius, and then we're going to go into details about all these individual points. The big thing is that essentially the sun is not really directly being harangued, or the psychological inspiration that you have to express your sun, it's not really in, it's not being worked out for you as a Sagittarius. Rather, you are working out things that are obstructing the path to expressing your inspiration, your constancy in your role as an inspired person who prevails over enemies and who expresses being on top of things. What is it that stops you from being on top of things generally? A big part of it is the feeling that you want to constantly apply this feeling of being well-to-do and inspiring others. You want to look like you're inspiring others to this esteemed sense of friendship, a friendship based on glorious, almost like competition. Like, come on, we got this, we're tight, right? You know, Sagittarius is kind of this like Three Musketeers person. And the Three Musketeers kind of like fought each other, but it was this way of sharpening their own skills. And Sagittarius is always looking for people to be that. And people are not always looking for the Sagittarius to be that. So that's why this transit relates to your workplace and finding people who do jive with that. Now, this could come down to actually uprooting your present relationships in order to find people who do appreciate the way that you are, but also B, finding new ways of approaching and relating to relationships and workplace relationships so that you can communicate that you like being this way. You like being on top and being this competitive rock and roll person, and showing them how that can be useful, especially in competition with other groups outside of your own group. But you need to find a way to be that, to express that you being that necessary evil is a constructive pitch towards a universal philosophy of competition, which brings all consciousness together in an inspired state of getting over our own psychological complexes. That's what Sagittarius is always saying, holding the flag. Come on, guys, we can do better, we can be better. Trust me, I am better, and I know that you guys can too. That's like I got Sagittarius moon, and I kind of jive with that in a lot of ways. So this period, in a way, is all about your relationships, especially relationships at work. But even your personal relationships are going to help constrict you to a proper psychological approach to this thing that you're trying to do. It's the way you relate with your partner, your lover, your family, siblings, and just the way that you just relate sexually, generally, is going to help bring out, it's going to help level out a sexuality that you tend to employ in the workplace, which can be inappropriate in a certain way. But if it's mild enough and subtle enough, then people enjoy it. This competitive, suave way that can emasculate men and objectify women for men. Or if you're a Sagittarius woman, it can patronize men and de-glorify other women when it's too extreme. And you might find that you employ this, and some people will enjoy it and become friends from it. It's like Venus is your 11th lord. So some people will be friends who enjoy the way that you relate at this personality level. Because you're a Sagittarius. You have Venus, and Venus will relate with other people, but you are so Sagittarian, trying to get over your own complexes and inspiring by example for others to get over their complexes, that you will have friends who appreciate that. But your friends can turn to enemies on a dime, because Taurus, which also rules Venus, is your 6th house. Do you see how the arrogant gains and glory and fame and name of the 11th house of Venus, which is considered an inauspicious evil house in Vedic astrology because of the egotism of it, because trying to be people's friends. And it's like, by trying to be people's friends, there are things that you don't want to say to them. And you know that, and you might, at the bright side of your personality, and glory them and bring them glory by saying that this person's like this and telling them that they're good for these reasons, and they become your friends because you identify it as an idea group that they are like this and that they have these things. But you might find that them as a person have things that you could be blunt and honest about. And when you do that, all of a sudden people don't think that you're quite the glorious friend that you were. All of a sudden people think that the only reason that you were complimenting them was so that you can be in their good books and get a positive reputation. Now when you're working with them as a coworker, all of a sudden they find that you're a dick because you have a strict, familiar way of relating with coworkers that involves the Sagittarian getting on top of them. And they're saying, you were good when you were touting about your skills in this group that everybody can appreciate, but now that I'm working with you in a group, could you tone it down a little? Now, you as the Sagittarius need to find a proper place for that, because sometimes you do need to tone it down. But sometimes you just need to communicate that this is a desired approach for you in the workplace and in your philosophy of life in general, and you just need to communicate it. This is something that you might need to communicate with your personal lovers too. And in fact, the only way to really ground your ability to consider this as an important value in the workplace and to pay attention and to actively grip this thing is by employing it in your personal relationships as well, in the way that you sexually identify, in the way that you exchange energy at a very basic unconscious level in the psyche of the childhood that you've employed since you were in puberty, from 10 to 14. So that's what Taurus is, early childhood vibes. So many of you experiencing Uranus going through Taurus right now are probably going to be feeling the classic thing of Uranus in the 6th house. You know, you can look up online and find Uranus in the 6th. What does it say? It says that you might find lacking unstable working conditions, right? Now, what I'm trying to do with these videos is educate by trying to expand on what the 6th house means to you as a Sagittarius, because the 6th house means different things to different people. Some people have a good relationship with their 6th house. Sagittarius doesn't. In fact, Venus is really the illest planet. Relationships are the one, they're like the Achilles heel that can bring down a Sagittarius, because they have so much potential, so much creative ability, so much power, so much inspiration to create. Leo is on their 9th house, and they just very naturally have an inner faith that they should keep moving forward with their buoyant prevailing over their own psychological hang-ups. Like a Sagittarius is just made for this stuff. The only Achilles heel is that others might break their self-esteem and might not provide a space for them to employ constantly this feeling of self-validation. And if you don't, then you might compensate, because your inspiration as a Sagittarius should be for inspiration's sake. Should be for a felt feeling that everyone in the world can understand the philosophy of getting on top of your own psychological hang-ups. Everybody should be able to relate creatively to that perennial philosophy, shouldn't they? And you should do that for its own sake. So that's why when you are dealing with people and friends at work or in groups where you want to be a leader, you should have your work relationships settled. Have a mild sort of fun sexual chemistry and flirtiness between friends at work. Don't be too pushy on them. And don't be too pushy with people, because what's going to happen is that if you are, then you're going to start to feel like you need to compensate. Your inspiration, the thing which drives you, should not come from a feeling that you are not emotionally loved. Because as soon as your inspiration turns into an attempt at validation, then all of a sudden Venus is at work and blocking what Sagittarius is really meant to do. Venus becomes egoic and says, I need people to validate this grand bigness that I constantly feel. And if you don't have your emotional network worked out, so you've got a constant, like 6th house level of routine checkups on your emotional validation from your partner, from people, and you need to communicate in order to tell people that you do need this, which is hard because you're Sagittarius and you want to tell people that you don't need it, but you do. You don't need to say it directly, but you need to find some way to communicate to others in a subtle, indirect way that I love you for what you give me, and I do need it. Even though you might not want to say that succinctly, because you want to tell everybody that everybody has everything that they need in order to get where they need to be. You need to work out your intimate relationships so that it doesn't cause you emotional insecurity, so that when you do something glorious, nobody points their finger and says, are you really being a beautiful, brilliant, artistic, theatrical performer and creator for creative spirit's sake, or are you just trying to look cool? You're just trying to be trendy. We don't know, because you are such a dick in your regular life that we just think that you're just trying to get on top of everybody, and it's annoying. Stop it. Get down from there. What are you doing? If people are reacting to you that way, you might need to examine your immediate personal relationships, because you might think and feel you have all the glory and inspiration and creative drive in the world, and you do. The way it comes off is going to reflect the fullness of your energy body and your chakra orientation. If you're not opening your heart chakra to Venus in a way that's constantly employed so that you find relationships which are endeared to your philosophy of being on top of things, if you don't make peace with others personally at that level, then it's going to come through your energy system, and you won't be able to live by your inspiration because you are going to question whether you can instigate your authority in any inspired moment or in a groups that you could be a leader in. People will always question it, and you'll start questioning yourself if you don't have this worked out. And what this is Taurus. Sexual relatability, energy exchange, resources and assets and self-worth and psychological feeling of value that comes from experiencing your value early in life in puberty, and eventually as it comes along in personal, intimate, romantic relationships overall. Not just romantic, but family ones, in your relationship to your father, you know, so that you can, as I always say with like Uranus and Taurus, you know, it's very much about not taking authority personally and also not giving authority with too much personality. If you have people working underneath you, then, you know, let them delegate with inspiration, but not in a way that looks like you are trying to funnel bitterness from above you. That relates with everybody in Uranus and Taurus, you know? So if your relationship with your father in a certain way, as well as your mother, if you're a man, you should be able to delegate authority to your partners without feeling like it's coming from an egoic place, but coming from the mutual inspiration of both of you, and this needs to be communicated. For women, it's sort of like the same. Dealing with your mother really will bring this out, so that when you're dealing with other women, you don't come off like a bitch who's just trying to delegate everybody for the sake of trying to look like the big bad bitch that everybody's all gung-ho about in an egoic way. You can kind of be that, but the best of Sagittarius comes through with a humbleness that has grounded and anchored and charged its emotional validation in its quiet little quarters, routinely, lovingly with other people, friends, so that when you do make an inspired statement that everybody can agree on and even pushes everybody through some creative device that you use to push everybody, everyone's going to see that, yeah, I am inspired to be what you're talking about. And no one's going to question whether you're just trying to steal the spotlight. So for you, as a Sagittarius, you might find a lacking sense of self-worth results in ignoring unstable, unenjoyable work conditions, especially through coworkers. You might have been ignoring unstable work conditions for a little bit, and it deeply relates to coworkers. It's because Uranus represents that we've become crystallized in a certain place, and it coming through means that we need to now obliterate that part of time. Basically, Uranus is it's like a comet, and what's immediately in front of the comet is darkness, and what trails behind the comet is illumination. And it's going in a circle, eating its own tail. So what's ahead of the comet is always darkness in a cycle. Uranus was recently in your 5th house in Aries. Right in front of Aries is getting blown up when Uranus is in Aries, and right in front of it is darkness, the 6th house, because it's been that long in your incarnational strand since Uranus has been in Taurus in the 6th house. That's the transcarnational ideal, is that you've gone through lifetimes or whatever, and now you're at a particular place where the head of the comet is in the 6th house where there is darkness, and it's going to illuminate it because it's been so long since it's been there. So you've been ignoring and just not caring about the 6th house in Taurus because you've been busy with other things. Especially, we're going to talk about what you were doing when Uranus was in Aries. Now, you can seek more enjoyable employment opportunities, by just finding new jobs that with new people that relate to your approach to reality in a different way. You might literally just think in a whole new way about how you work in your routine reality. And you'll especially find good places right now if your Venus is well placed. If it's not, then you might continually seek and you might never really be happy with what you find. But this period will cause you to explore and experiment until you find something at least better than what was there before Uranus came through. And so you might really seek more enjoyable employment opportunities, especially by working on... This is a way for you to work through self-esteem issues. And this is really the place, a critical stage for which you can employ Leo, as we're going to talk about. Taurus is necessary because Taurus is the 10th house from Leo. And the 10th house is where we work out, it's the stage through which we work out karmas. Taurus is the stage through which we work out Leo. And Leo is very important to you as a Sagittarius. So let's talk about how essentially the sun is quite natural to Sagittarius. Inspiration, healthy competition, and creatively prevailing above enemies for our group, but also within our group, which is part of the annoying problem of it. This is an inborn inspiration for Sagittarius. And Uranus here is not necessarily building up the sun so much as obliterating obstructions to your secure expression of the sun. It's because Uranus, again, is in the 6th house, and this is important. This is the field through which Sagittarius can work out karmas that allow them to confidently stand with authority in this creatively bringing inspiration and a feeling of moving forward for everybody. You really need others in your world, and also the way that you relate to others is going to reflect on the way that you relate to your own psychology. Remember, I keep saying that Sagittarius is pushed through Leo. It's their inspiration. Leo is the sun for everybody. And so the sun is the 9th lord for Sagittarius. So wherever the sun is in your chart is how you channel and express this vessel that you act as for the inspiration of the group that you're in. And Leo is standing on the 10th, its 10th house, which is Taurus. So the way that you learn to relate confidently in immediate relationships and associations is how getting on top of that in a way that is rational, logical, and even inspired and intuitive in the way that relationships ought to work, with mutual communication, but ultimately with you being the sexy, sassy sort of like instigator and pusher that Sagittarius is so naturally is. If you can get on top of that pattern with people, then you will learn to get on top of the patterns in your own psyche that can bring you down. Or like your own psyche has its ways and its travails and its patterns. And you, by working out the karmas of how you interrelate at the office or in personal relationships or with friends, is how you learn to relate with the demons and the heavy, nagging voices in your own inspired path to expressing the sun constantly. So to just delineate this a little bit more, I'd like to just show you a quick picture of a chart of Sagittarius Lagna. Lagna meaning ascendant. This chart comes from Asheville Vedic Astrology, the apprenticeship program that I'm going through with Ryan Kurczak. I'm in like my 3rd year. And this chart is showing, I like to talk like this is this presentation is made for Sagittarius rising, Sagittarius Lagna. And I just like to educate when I can about not just what it means to have Uranus and Taurus in your 6th house, but why it comes through the way it does. Now, this is Sagittarius. This is Sagittarius Ascendant down here, Capricorn is the second house, Aquarius is the third, Pisces fourth, Aries is the fifth, and then Taurus is the sixth, where Uranus is, right? Now, we can see that there's red I's and green A's. The green A means auspicious, meaning good, benefic. All of the signs that have A's naturally relates to the agenda of the inspiration of Sagittarius. The reason that these signs are that way is because they're fire and water signs. You notice that all the fire and water signs are ruled by a group of 4 planets. Sagittarius and Pisces, fire and water, ruled by Jupiter. Aries and Scorpio, fire and water, ruled by Mars. And Jupiter and Mars are best friends. Cancer is a water sign, and it's ruled by the moon. Leo is a fire sign, ruled by the sun. So we can see that fire and water signs get along together, and air and earth signs don't get along with them as much. So these signs that are ruled by water and earth signs that are ruled by Venus, Mercury, and Saturn, Sagittarius has a harder time with. It's like this annoying necessary evil in order to express what they're better at, which is the fiery, who cares about rational, who cares about counting the numbers, let's just express the thing. That's what Sagittarius prefers. Who cares about how you say it? What matters is what's said, right? That's what Sagittarius says, and their coworker looks at them and says, well, actually, I would prefer that if you would be a little bit more meaningful and sort of friendly in your gestures, because you're kind of coming off like a dick. This is why Taurus is annoying to Sagittarius, because they just want to say the thing. But Taurus is a necessary evil for Sagittarius, and if you ignore it, and if you ignore, you might be inclined to ignore it, but if you do, and if your Venus is not well placed especially, then you are going to have trouble in the signs that you are natural to and do want to express. We can see that Leo is the 9th house from Sagittarius. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So Leo, the sun, is a necessary way for Sagittarius to express themselves. Now, and is part, the sun is just the constancy, the inner faith of having some kind of creative direction, no matter where it's going, but just building on the inborn desire to express one's own constant sense of nobility. That's the sun. It's the 9th house. This brings out a natural role for Sagittarius, and it brings luck and inspiration, and these things that are natural to Sagittarius. Leo's natural to him, but Taurus is not as much. Taurus is ruled by the inauspicious 6th house, which has Saturnian, annoying, conscripting qualities to it, as well as the 11th house, which is always considered to be egoic, because you want to look good to the group for goodness' sake. And that's not evil in itself, although it has egoic tendencies. If your Venus is well placed, then you will nullify the egotism and still look good in a group, and you'll be a leader, and people will appreciate what you do, even though it'll always come off with a little bit of this like egotism and sort of too much like what's the word, like a prestige, like a fine richness because I'm on top of everyone. You know, it can kind of come off with that sort of vibe, but if Venus is well placed, it'll be better and worth it, you know. And Uranus being in Taurus is teaching you how to prevail without coming off too egotistical. I digress. What I wanted to show this chart for is because, again, Taurus is in the 10th from Leo. Anything from the 10th house of anything is... The 10th house is always the platform through which we work out the karma of something. The example I always use is that the 10th from the 7th house is the 4th house. The way that we relate to our own emotional reality is how we relate to the emotional reality of others in social situations. We work out the karma of relating with others by relating to ourselves and our roots. In the same way, Taurus is the 10th house from Leo. If we count 10 from Leo, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That means that Taurus is the way through which the sun learns to work out its karmas and express itself. It's a very important thing for Leo, for the sun, for all of us. Particularly for you, because Leo is your 9th lord. And the 9th lord is the most important planet in the chart. So Sagittarius has the capacity to use the sun better than anybody else. They are inspired to employ this constancy of inspiration and purpose naturally. They have an inner faith that they ought to do that. Now, you don't have a hard time sensing that, but you might have psychological, emotional complications that block you from manifesting and employing this inborn faith that you already have. It's not the faith that you need to work on, it's the psychological feeling of emotional validation in the past, which you could use to reduce the people's sense of egotism in your constancy of your path. It is reducing barnacles that latch on to this thing that you've already got going on. That's what Taurus represents to Leo. Venus is ever this annoying barnacle which Sagittarius has to deal with. Whether you want to or not, you need to be able to deal, all the fire signs need to deal with the annoying placement of the earth signs in the 6th house. But if you put it in the right psychological framework, then you'll see it as a necessary thing and a joyous challenge to be a part of. And if you should be inspired to get over it because you're a Sagittarius, right? So let's talk a little bit about Uranus and what Uranus is. Essentially, Uranus is actually pure potential, whereas the sun is an in-the-moment inspiration, like it's your karma. It's what you use, it's a hole through which your energy pours itself into the universe based on the karma that you've come from before, and it's got an ego structure. It's got a psychological structure. There is a proper way to employ your brain, your particular brain, not just the human brain in general, but your best expression of the brain that has come through your childhood and your genetic ancestry and everything. There is a best way to employ your psyche specifically, the way that you are. Not only the way you are, but the way you have been through childhood, right? Who you've become through this incarnation's build-up of your childhood psychology. There is a best way to employ it. And this is what Uranus is trying to teach us. I've been saying in all these videos that Isabel Hickey makes mention of a Native American myth. She just mentions it in passing when she's talking about Uranus in this book. It's a Western astrology book. I do recommend it. It's a little out of date, but it's got useful stuff. And one of the things that she says is that okay, so the Native Americans have this myth where the sun that we know in the sky, I wonder if I can get it on my little beetle poster here. The sun that we know in the sky is actually just a hole in the sky. This is a metaphor, right? We know that through NASA and astronomy and Copernicus and science and such, that the world is not flat. Let me just put that personal opinion out there. But that there is a floating orb around which we revolve, and it appears to be this big glowing thing in the sky. The Native Americans had this funny metaphor, and it's an idea. Whether they believed this or not, I don't even know what sect of Native Americanism had this idea. Just Isabel Hickey threw it in there. It's a cool metaphor. That thing in the sky that we spin to see every morning is actually a hole in the sky. And there is a sun behind that hole, which is what's projecting the infinite potential energy behind the sun, whereas the sun is just a hole. It's your hole. The sun is your opened channel, an electrical circuit board for the infinite electrical potential of Uranus. Now, your brain represents the sun here, the hole. How is your brain going to, specifically your brain, going to best employ its nature, what it is, towards a constant singular direction and focus of expression, and something which uses the karma that you've been, all of your routines and habits and energies, food, psychological resources, mother, father, family, ancestry. How are you going to use all these things that add up to one singular brain, which can compute moment-to-moment things? How are you going to use everything that you are to employ some kind of a constancy of purpose, a constancy of inspiration, and an inspiration which actually is greater than the sum of its parts? That's the power of the sun. It's the singular focus in all of us to take everything that we are and put it towards some direct, singular directive, which is, again, more than the sum of it, greater than the sum of its parts. How do we go about that? How does your particular karma go about that, which will make you stand alone with what you are? Uranus is a huge open gateway to expanding on what your sun is, what your sun means. And it is going to do this by bucking Saturn, but then having Saturn come back in, and then bucking Saturn again, and then having Saturn come back in again. Uranus is a pure infinite potential principle. This is how I've been describing Uranus in each of these videos, okay? Imagine a caveman. A caveman, two cavemen, ancient times, before fire was invented. One caveman has this like rotted piece of mutton on a bone, and he slaps it on this big rock, okay? And he wants to take another rock and beat this piece of raw meat to pulverize it and make it easier for him to chew and to fall off the bone, right? So he's just this big, clunky, clumsy Neanderthal, takes this rock, and it happens to be flint. And he smashes this piece of meat. And every time he misses, and every time he just slightly misses, the flint hits the rock that the meat is standing on. And some sparks fly off, okay? Now, the caveman's buddy, another caveman, is looking at what's going on. His friend takes the flint, smashes the rock, and sparks fly around some dead grass brush. And there's some sparks happen, some smoke happens, and it almost looks like it's going to start a fire. Now, the caveman who's watching this doesn't rationally know in this moment what's unfolding, which is the perennial physics of igniting combustion and fire. The caveman doesn't know any of the science, any of this physics. They can't put the two and two together, but there's an intuition happening. For some reason, this caveman intuitively, instinctually sees that this is happening, and they see the smoke on the grass, and they're just like, "Grr." It's like they're not even thinking about it. They're just acting on this impulsive intuition to smack the rock, make fire happen on the dead grass, and then fire happens, and they're like, what the heck is this? Look at this energy that's happening. How did they intuit the best way to use those elements and materials which they were experiencing? It was just inborn in them. To just make that, to just go by the logic of what's being expressed there. There's an logical expression for the best output of the elements that are being combined. And in the same way, there is a logical expression for the best output of the elements that make you up, that employ your sun, your constant ability to act on inspiration in order to take all the karmas that you've been and slowly exercise and push yourself towards a higher state of the complete being of the sun that is inside of you, and the Uranus and the pure potential. So wherever Uranus is that you might experiment in this way and go too headstrong into some kind of experiment, and it always brings lack. In the same way that you got to crack a few eggs to make an omelet. You know, those cavemen might have beat 10,000 rocks on 10,000 things using different, like, just fruitlessly experimenting with this before finally somebody, and it was wasted energy too, because they could have just been going, once this one caveman gets this idea, they start experimenting with it, and it could take them like 4 or 5 or 10 wasted years of just throwing rocks at walls where they could have been going out and hunting antelope and just enjoying that meat like all their friends are. The Uranus person says, just for some reason, I got to try this thing. So you could waste a lot of time wherever Uranus is, but it eventually could bring up the lesson that you're trying to learn right now, because Uranus has been the house that Uranus is in. It's been crystallized for so long. Now spring of Uranus, transcendental chakra, has come, and the spring is unfurling the winter of the chrysalis of whatever you haven't been doing in that house, whatever you've been ignoring. I hope that makes sense. That's a whole lot going on with what I just described. Now again, the sun is natural to Sagittarius. It's your auspicious 9th house. That constancy of purpose is easy for you. Even to feel inspired is probably relatively easy for you, especially if the sun is well placed. Even if it's not, you still have this way of having a constant inspiration. You just might not always find the best place for it and employment of it. Now you as a Sagittarius, just like the rest of us, need Saturn as well. Saturn rules your 2nd house and 3rd house. So you need to have some kind of reliable, routine, duty, something that you can, a skill and education. Sagittariuses are very firm about getting educated because Capricorn rules the 2nd house of education and these things. Saturn is this necessary thing where you need to educate yourself, and then you can break free. Uranus will break you free, have you explore and experiment and play with what Saturn has conscripted itself to with its education in the 2nd house, and also exploring through the 3rd house, because Aquarius rules the 3rd house. You need to employ this sort of like specific form knowledge expansion, like by getting an education, and then climb higher. And then once you climb to a new height, you do the Saturn thing again, conscript yourself to a form where you can make money off of your skill, and then eventually Uranus comes again, breaks it up, and then you got to find a new way to constantly relate more of your sun to the forms that you've taken on as a Sagittarius who wants to have skills that are useful and reliable and constant in the Saturn way. So that is the fun interplay between Sun, Saturn, and Uranus. Now for you, right now, Uranus is in Taurus in the 6th house. And Uranus could be in other places which might be even more meaningful and fruitful. For example, you just had Uranus in Aries in your 5th house. That would have been an important time. Probably what happened is that from about 2011 till about 2018, somewhere around there, you've been living through experiences which just push you to desire to act creatively, because Aries is your 5th house, and Aries is the wild, unimpeded gazelle who's just like running like impulsively in an urgency to just experiment with things. In fact, you're probably given lots of time to experiment with the way that you relate to your own creativity. I wrote something on it, and I can't seem to find it. So you have been, from 2011 to 2018-ish, around there, you've just probably been compelled to ecstatically unfurl new impulsive ways of being creative and expressing creative desires that are fun that are enjoyable for everybody, that are enjoyable for you, and are even a bit pushy and aggressive and warrior-like. Sagittarius can have a warrior-ish sense of what we need to do to brainstorm. They like enforce brainstorming, Sagittarius, and can kind of have this instinctive way of expressing themselves and being intelligent. It's like they're impulsively, aggressively intelligent and discerning, and they want to be this intelligent way. So while Uranus was transiting Aries, you might have found that you were looking for ways of being expressive for its own sake. Pure expression. In even a spontaneous sense of expression. And it's really like an experimental exploration phase, which you now have probably feel confident that you're actually really good at. You've probably built resources in your own psyche so that you've done maybe meditation and self-help things so that you might be good at this kind of thing, like a self-help, an entrepreneur guru who, if you're not, whatever you're doing in your life, you've probably figured out ways of thinking about and employing how you can be experimental for experimentality's own sake. Aries is just the pioneer of experimentalness, and Sagittarius feels creative, 5th house, about this raw feeling for your own sake, experimenting on how you can unlock the brain chemistry that would open you up and allow you to express spontaneous genius, intelligence, and insight and wisdom, and to apply it aggressively when you see fit. It's the Aries vibe. Now, all of this has been happening with Uranus and Aries, and it's built you up to a place where now you want to express it. Now you want to see it unfurled for others. Of course, Aries is trine Leo, so while anything's in the 5th house, it's in the trines, and you are even finding Leonine inspiration and all these things. You were finding a channel for Leonine inspiration while Uranus was in Aries as well. Now, Uranus has come to the 6th house, and you're finding that you're tripping over your toe. And what your toe is basically something that's important to everybody. Sagittarius might not think it's as important. You might think of it as this ball and chain that you have to deal with in order to get around to this inspiration that you really want to do. And what that is Taurus in relationships. Venus is a distinct obstruction in this path because co-workers can become enemies on a dime, wreck Sag's reputation, and even obstruct daily routines. The reason for this is because So, Venus also rules Libra. It's your 11th house. So, Venus ruling Libra as the 11th lord, this exacerbates your felt need to be friends with those who you attempt to undermine as loyal friends. Sagittarius is one of the 3 musketeers, and he really hopes that Sagittarius, you hope that you can battle a friend and win, and that they won't take it personally. And that they're like, well, let this be a lesson to your own inspiration, because you can be just as good as me, and you're lucky that you have me as a friend to get better at this swordplay. That's what Sagittarius wants. And again, it can come off as just being a dick, especially if you don't ever try to work it out. Now, the thing about it is that this can uproot your validation and confidence. It's not even that. It's that by doing what you do, others, your immediate relationships that you have, might get burned out by the way that you are because you're not listening to them. You're not relating to them in a fair, equal trade-off. showing them equal dignity, even like implying that you've got this skill that, trust me, you know, I'm good for you because I'm amazing. Can imply that, but don't actually really rub it too much in anybody's faces. You know, so the thing is that right now you need to, you might even find actually that there's a sexual tension with coworkers, which really should not be too present. It's because of this unpruned thing that you've just been letting kind of just go since like childhood, again, and puberty, that you've just been kind of letting it go in a way. It's the feeling of like almost like an implied background sexual tension where, you know, men tend to emasculate other men without realizing it, but it's the sake of, we're all men here and we all want to be men, and the way of man is to put down other men so that men can be extra manly men. It's just, you know, so you might emasculate other men as a man while objectifying women, treating them like this thing that, come on, baby, I'm Mr. Sexy Macho Man, and, you know, I'll get you what you want if you get me what I want. It doesn't necessarily need to come down to sex, but it can be a bit objectifying and detached. And conversely, if you're a woman, you might find yourself patronizing men. Oh, yes, oh, big daddy, yeah, why don't you get me that stapler over there, and I'll just, like, turn my shirt down a little bit, and, like, you know, could you also get me a glass of water? Like, this is the objectifying that women can do with coworkers, but also by doing that, they also bring attention of other women who just think that they're kind of being, like, not really contributing to anything. You're just trying, in both cases, you're trying to overcompensate a lack of emotional richness in your own life. Because if you really are moving by your inspiration and by a universal feeling that the universe clicks to the tune of personal self-betterment, if that is truly your inspiration and your intention, then you don't need to add too much extra sexual emphasis on the things that are along the way to what you're doing. I mean, sexuality can be okay, but it's when it's like put on, it's when you manipulate with it that people begin to question, why do you need to egoically project a sense of self-validation if what you're saying is so true and beautiful? People are always going to question this with you if you don't level with your coworkers at the level of a decent, equally dignified approach with a little bit of that arrogant cockiness, but not in a way that soils your true desire and reputation. Don't treat people like crap, you know? Even if it's a necessary evil, it's an evil that you have an opportunity to employ now. So you can seek a balance here by satisfying your sexual drive. A juicy personal life is what solves this. The way of sexual relating should be mild with coworkers and 11th house colleagues alike, too. You shouldn't have to convince your colleagues that you're right because you're sexy. Or you shouldn't have to convince your colleagues that you're right because you have this many assets or that you've got this much money, you've got this title. I'm a doctorate, PhD, this and that, and you should be able to listen to what I'm saying. You know, people will take you at your real inspiration if you're acting by your inspiration, and you will act by your true inspiration if you have your emotional complexities worked out. If you get a good bang on with your partner at home, you don't need to bring in emotional validation to the things that you are inspired to employ, right? This is what this period is teaching you. It might be annoying. It's it's frustrating because it's the 6th house, but it's not going to obliterate anything, at least until Uranus gets into Gemini for you. That's when this is really, unless you have important planets in Taurus, unless Venus is your Atmakarika. Again, look in the first video to see what causes extra significance for you in this transit. Truth, beauty, and cooperation are what should be causing you to prevail, not a feeling like your father never loved you enough and never thought you were enough, so now you need to compensate for that by getting on top of people's heads just for its own arrogant sake. That's going to ruin your reputation, and it's going to ruin your true inspiration. The field of your every moment interactions with everybody in a routine way, even doing little checks for yourself, you know, ways of relating with people. Every moment is an opportunity to employ the emotional validation, the feeling like, oh, this person, if you don't need to push too hard on anybody, like to make the move, they're going to feel like you're just solid just for your own sake. And if you relate to them in a nice way, in a Venusian way, which is just actually accommodating for them, you can be cocky because people love that. So the last part of this video is really all about, you know, this period is all about ventilation for you related to the workplace and your sexuality. And so what you need to do is, experiment in finding people who validate and understand your preferred personality, which gives open channels for experimental creativity, which is, you know, Aries in the 5th. It's like you want to be in an experimental place with people, and you want to lead in that experimentation. You want to lead by inspiration, and you want to be a little bit cocky and even inviting of competition in a way that others enjoy, so that they can trust when you as a group go and face other groups. It's like, oh, it's okay, we got Sagittarius in tow, so like we know that they're competitive, he or she is competitive, and she's going to really bring us through and win this thing. That's a useful personality arc, as long as when you do the in the group thing, it doesn't bother people too much. But you either can in this cycle, because Uranus is in Taurus, you might find a whole new change in the workplace because it's never going to work in the workplace that you're in. And that might have happened if you have an ill Venus, or if you have a malefic in Taurus. You might find that you had to do this job because it's helping you ground whatever that planet is. If you've got Mars there, if you've got Mars in Taurus, then your 5th house is being grounded in your immediate workplace. Or Uranus is going to come through and obstruct not only your creative thing, because Mars, your 5th lord, is there, but also the workplace through which you have been expressing Mars. So think about that for any planet. But even if there's no planet there, you are using your workplace right now as a stepping stone to get where you really want to be. So you need to find a workplace, which really kind of jives to what you want to feel in every moment, that's going to help you reduce your emotional clenching and help to just, everybody needs Venus. Even if it's an evil, inauspicious planet, it helps everybody. And B, if you're already in a good workplace, if you already got a good lover who you don't feel the need to like break up with because she doesn't understand that you're Mr. Cocky Sagittarius or Mrs. Cocky Sagittarius, then find constant communication with others in ways which don't demoralize them, but inspire them. Maybe even challenge them a little bit in a proper way that you do, but not so much that they become your enemy. This is what you need to do, is that it's either you're going to find people who do vibe to your tune, but even when you do, Uranus and Taurus is going to show you that you might just get a whole new workplace and come into a new workplace and it's like, yes, this is my new workplace. This is a new vibe, new job, new boss, it's new people, everything's new. It's going to be completely new. Guess what? Your relationship to your workplace is not going to change if you don't change your relationship to the workers in the workplace, and your attitude towards people, and your way of relating with people. no matter where you try to find this new workplace. And you might very well find a new workplace, but it's more about your relationship to work itself. And this is grounded through the way that you relate with people. And this ultimately is also a necessary ground, because Taurus is the 10th house from Leo, which means that whatever karma you work out now is also going to teach you about the hang-ups that you employ in yourself on the road to expressing your sun. If you can tell your lover that, you know, we're having a lot of struggles right now, but I need to work hard on this part of this job. I hope you're okay with that, honey, because I know we planned to go to the water park next weekend, but I need to be able to work. If you can say that to your lover and you're secure and confident that you can just flick of the wrist say it, not arrogantly, but that they will still feel bonded to you, because it's okay for you both to work at this way that you are of pushing yourself and your lover beyond their boundaries in order to get the most of it, in order to get the richness of it. If you can do that with your lover and with your boss and with a coworker, then you can definitely do it for yourself. And this is why Taurus is the arena through which you can unfurl the deepest ramparts of working out the karmas that block you from expressing Leo and your 9th house. It is a very important transit for you, Sagittarius. So I hope this worked out for you. I hope this was clear. This turned out to be one of the longest videos that I've done in this series. It happens. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know how it goes. Let me know in the comments if I hit the mark for you. I'm very curious. And I love doing these videos. So, you know, stay tuned, because eventually we're going to do Uranus and Gemini in 5 years or something like that. And what I will say is that Uranus and Gemini will be more meaningful to you because it'll be in an angle at that point, the 7th house. It'll challenge you to employ the discoveries of sexual competence and niceness and the way that you relate with people to apply to relationships with practical skills that invite partnerships based on mutual function, the functionality. And the only way that you're going to know how to be functional in the 7th house, and even in your business contracts and partnerships, is by working right now on the basic attitude and approach that you have to dealing with people in an equal dignity way. 6th and 7th house is a tough one for Sagittarius that they don't get along with. But if you can if you can patch up the holes in the bucket, then, you know, like our evil houses, our annoying houses, our inauspicious houses are like holes in our bucket. And if we patch them up, then there's nothing to stop the true water of our inspired activity that we really do want to do. But if you leave those holes in the bucket, it doesn't matter how inspired you are as a Leo. You're not going to be able to, as a Sagittarius with Leo in the 9th house, you're not going to be able to fully express it unless you deal with all the parts of your karma. So, gosh, I could go on about this forever, but I feel like I should stop now. I'm Dustin Cormier for How to Rock Astrology. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys dug it. Let me know what you think in the comments. Like, subscribe, all that shit. And I'll see you guys on the next whatever I do. Thanks for watching. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Nice to see you today. My name is Dustin Cormier, and welcome to How to Rock Astrology. We've got another fun episode today. As you've been watching, I've been kind of just doing this since, I don't know, gosh, it's 9 o'clock now. I've been doing this since 5 o'clock. Yeah, something like that. Gotta rock and roll, you know? If you are watching this segment of this episode, we've been talking about Uranus and Taurus, what it means generationally. Now we're talking about Uranus and Taurus for all the rising signs. And this is Uranus and Taurus for Capricorn rising. I hope you guys enjoy. Now, first thing we're going to do is talk a little bit about Capricorn rising, what the agenda of Capricorn is, and how it relates to the particular sign emphasis of planets that we're talking about. Now, at some point, we need to give short thrift Whoa. My computer's having a moment. Hopefully I didn't destroy the universe and mess up my audio tracking. So we've been talking about how the Sun and Saturn and Uranus are kind of... This is Capricorn Lagna here. But let me just have a quick word. We've been talking about how Uranus is in a deep relationship with Saturn and the Sun. We could think of it as a game of musical chairs, where your instinct to just keep playing the game, even when you fail. You know, it's like, let's say you're in elementary school. Do you remember musical chairs? Where the music starts playing, and let's say there's like 10 kids, but only 7 chairs. Then that means that 7 kids are going to fight to get in that chair and sit down and, oh, it's mine, I got it. And if you're not one of those 7, then you get ousted. Now, Saturn is like the chair. It's a specific role, and only certain amount of people are good enough to be recognized as having the skills required for that job. Saturn. You need to develop skills in order to have the confidence to sit in that chair and to earn your spot. Capricorn is richly involved with all of that. But you still have a Sun in your chart, and you still have Uranus in your chart. And the Sun and Uranus are in a funny relationship for any Capricorn rising. Funny in a sort of an annoying way. Because the Sun is the 8th lord for Capricorn. It's not friends with Saturn. They're antagonistic to each other. Now you are a Capricorn who's like is more about Saturn than the Sun. But you have to deal with the Sun. Just like how for everybody else, they embody typically the Sun, and they have to deal with Saturn. You, as a Capricorn, are very much a Saturnian person, and you need to learn how to deal with your Sun in order to best express your energetic potentials, your ego, as a Capricorn. And you have to do it in a way that's not too aggressive on some ends, but also too feigning in surrendering to the authority of a bigger organization or picture than yourself. There are times when you as a Capricorn know that it is good to do this bowing thing, do the obeisance to the gods of the hierarchy of financial and fiscal awareness and whatever job or company that you decide to climb the company ladder of. Your natural posture is just like, yeah, boss, yeah, what can I do to get where you are? Because I am dedicated to that. So you're used to the downward posture, but usually what happens for Capricorn is that they kind of have a bitterness towards that, but doesn't matter, because when I get on there, I'm going to give it right back. And then once they get on top, then it's like, oh boy, now I've got some loyal subjects, and I'm the one on top, and I'm going to give it to you, and you are going to get just as much grief as I got going where I am on the top. And that's a little too Saturn. That's a little tough. It's a little gross. Although, sometimes that might, if you have a good Saturn, then you will develop, and if you have a good Venus, let's say, more importantly, if you have a good, strong Venus, then you'll know that the person on top of you doesn't take it personally that you're beneath them. And the people beneath you don't take it personally that you're on top of them. That's when you have a good Venus, and you get emotional fulfillment, so you don't need to spit this venom back in the face of those who don't even deserve it. You don't need to continue this ugly cycle of being a bad boss because your boss was bad to you. You can even absorb, if you have a good Venus, you can absorb the gross energy of your boss and say, you know what, I'm going to be better than you when I get to where you are. That's a good Venus coming through a Capricorn person. That's Capricorn at its best. But in order to do that, you need to deal with the rather unstable nature of your own ego. Because your ego might have a hard time because, the Leo rules your 8th house. But I digress. What I wanted to say before we get into the actual chart is that Uranus relates to a infinite, timelessly permeating. Uranus relates to an infinite, timelessly permeating, metaphysical evolutionary structure of spirit and matter. Uranus is intuition. Uranus is, it's like an ape who sees, like, let's say we're talking an ape before time, and somebody is trying to smash meat bones between these two rocks. And so they're going bang, bang, trying to get the meat off of it. And another ape sees every time you do that, there's a spark. And a little bit of fire is created. What is that? And it's that ape which just has the intuition for whatever reason that maybe if I take these rocks, smash it against some dead grass, it'll light fire, and oh my god, there's this fire thing. I knew it. I don't know how I knew it, but I did. Fire is a perennially occurring form of nature that any animal on any planet can get in tune with if it has the intuition to. And so it is with metaphysical evolution of the soul, that any organism can get in touch with if their Uranus is turned on, to awaken the Promethean fire within you. So, Uranus for you expresses the best of how you can express your sun. Uranus, so dig this, okay? We've been talking about how, I say this for every sign. Isabel Hickey, in her book, Astrology, A Cosmic Science, she talks about how the Native American mythos of Uranus is as such. They thought the Native Americans had this idea of a certain sect. She mentions this in passing in her book. They had this thought that the sun was actually a hole in the sky. This hole where karma and attributes and even intuition drip through a genetic framework. I mean, I'm blending things, but the mythos is that the sun is a hole in the sky, and there's a true sun behind it, and that true sun is Uranus. Now, this sun in the sky is your energetic form, which you need to express in this incarnation right now in order to either backslide or even develop farther into your evolutionary karmic baggage, effort expressed per results gained by your self-illumination. Uranus is how to get from wherever you are to where you should be. The sun is the carrier of this energy within you. And Saturn is the carrier of stability, of channeling that. So Uranus relates to your sun. And that's why Uranus and the sun can very much work together to undermine Capricorn in very frustrating ways, especially depending on where Uranus is transiting in relation to you as a Capricorn. Because you as a Capricorn just want to get your one solid route to constantly progress in the world for its own sake, almost in an egotistical, hierarchical way, but that's just because you understand that the world is like that. Shit flows downhill, as so many Capricorns like to say in the industrial world. The crap gets the crap, and the cream of the crop gets the cream. If you work hard to develop a singular channel or route for the expression of your potential energies, and you work hard enough at it, despite all of your emotional angst and emotional fluctuations and whatever, you can get to the top of some pyramid where you can be seen as being better than everybody. But the question for Capricorn is, will this relate to your sun? Will this relate to the true spirit that you seek to express in every moment and with what the sun means to you as your eighth lord? This is the importance of this funny thing that's going on with Capricorn, okay? But you can't let Saturn completely take over the sun, and you can't let it take... Uranus is going to teach you this. You might be a Capricorn who does well, and if you have a bad... you might get to be 40 years old and have done okay, and you've been developing on your own Saturn within. If your Saturn is badly placed, even if you're a Capricorn, you might think that I'm Mr. Saturn, but if you waste your life with, like, working at some corporate ladder, being miserable to everyone around in your life and having this bitter, curmudgeon-y sort of way. But also, if that Saturn obstructs your sun, then you won't do what the sun does to get an ecstatic, spiritual relationship with your own energy. How Capricorn does this is by merging with other people, because Leo rules the 8th house. So for a Capricorn, what you do to be seen widely amongst others is that you have to involve yourself with other groups, other people, marriages. That's the 8th house thing. It's the 2nd from the 7th. You have to get either married or involve yourself with business contracts and people and specific groups through which you can wrangle this sense of getting on top of things. Now, usually what happens with Capricorn is they get in a group until they get a sense that they can get into a better group, and then they go to that next better group or that next bigger paradigm. That's why the sun is unstable as an 8th lord. Because you get to one thing, like a scorpionic desire to be in this one place, and then you get familiar, and then you say, so this grouping has been good, but now with my Capricorn eye, I find I can climb higher if I get away from this grouping. Can I let them go? Can I just let this group go? And wheel and deal and do the best of my responsibilities for this group, commit to my commitments, see them through, but also pull out when I have to in order to get to the next best space that I want. This is why self-expression and creative expression can be tough for Saturn, because they go for the group first, and often whatever group they get into can kind of dissolve constantly. Capricorn is going through high outfits to another high outfit, to another company that's got a better and more involved system. And this is how Capricorn expresses the sun, is by involving itself in these groups, but being light enough that they can move on to another one. And they end up getting their finger in many pies, Capricorn. And if you have your finger in too many pies, then the quantity of fingers in pies means that you're not tasting any of the individual pies, you're not developing properly, and you're never going to climb the mountain if you spread yourself too thin. But the sun needs to spread itself the perfect amount in perfect ways so it doesn't lose, and it needs to do it egoically. It needs to tell everybody in a commanding way that this is what I'm doing in this group. So that was a lot just to explain Capricorn's thing here. Now let's take a look at our little diagram. This diagram comes from Ryan Kurczak's Astrology Apprenticeship Program, the Asheville Vedic Astrology Apprenticeship Program. As we can see here, what's going on is that we have the Ascendant. We have these green A's and red I's. As you can assume, the red I is bad and the green A is good. What this is showing is the relationship of these different signs and their planetary lords to Capricorn Ascendant. Now, usually this relationship is mathematical and has to do with, especially, it has to do with the involvement of the 1st, 5th, and 9th houses, because those are the trinal houses. And a trine is always, we know from all astrology that trines are the better, most important relationships. So Capricorn is in trine with Virgo and Taurus. Taurus is the 5th house from Capricorn, which basically, if a planet is in the 5th house, whatever other sign it rules doesn't matter, because the 5th is one of the most, it is like an auspicious house. So you can take, for example, let's say Libra is the 10th house of Capricorn. And the 10th house works well for Capricorn because, lo and behold, Capricorn likes it. Capricorn is the 10th sign. So, of course, the 10th house from Capricorn would be friendly to Capricorn, right? Taurus, being the 5th lord, is what makes the 10th house of Libra auspicious, positive, promoting. Because by dealing with the world, And by relating with others, communicating with others, Libra, business, Capricorn is relating at an essential way to what it is, what its charm is, what its natural self-expression is, sexually and materially, and in business and with wealth and with money and skill and knowledge and reputation. It uses all of these things and the felt confidence of all these things and the charm in order to deal with the world and with other people, Libra. So the 10th and the 5th are intimately related, and this is very important to Capricorn Lagna as well as this presentation, of course. And then, of course, we can also see that Gemini and Virgo are both ruled by Mercury, and they're auspicious because Virgo is the 9th lord. Even though Gemini is the 6th lord, which is an inauspicious house, right? The 6th house for a Capricorn is considered auspicious. This also relates to the fact that Capricorn likes routine anyway, so a Capricorn would naturally vibe with the 6th house. Now, we can also see that Leo is considered inauspicious to Capricorn. You'll notice that the earth and air signs are all ruled by Venus, Mercury, and Saturn, while the fire and water signs are all ruled by Jupiter, Sun, Moon, and Mars. This is a divide in the zodiac groupings, and Leo is on the sun and the fiery side, the ambition for the sake of the spirit side, the side that can be egotistical and can ruin the detachment that Capricorn goes for. Capricorn hates having to deal in groups because that's where its ego always comes out, even though it doesn't want it to, because it doesn't care about this group. It doesn't care about our group. It cares about what's best. And the Capricorn can be very terse to whatever groups they get involved with because they have to tell the group that we're not doing as good. We need to do this in order to be useful to everybody, to get on top of the game, to use our discernment and discipline. And we need to be disciplined and rigorous and methodical in order to extract a perfect plan in order to get ahead of everyone else that we're in a similar field with. And now everyone else is like, okay, Jesus, who put this guy in charge? Okay, calm down, Capricorn. We know you want to be Mr. Boss Guy, but we're all working here just as hard as you are. Relax. Okay? Capricorn hates it when that happens. Now, what can a Capricorn do to remove this egotism of Leo? What can a Capricorn do to make itself not seem like its direction and its directives in groups have a tinge of psychological egotism where, you might think, the Capricorn in the group who's doing all this finger pointing and saying, you do this and you do this and you do this, everyone, if they don't have charm, and if they don't have confidence, and they're just like, look, the boss told me to do this, and so you better do it, you might think, gosh, like that person probably didn't have the best relationship with his father, because he doesn't know how to be a benevolent father who can lead, but in a way that's assumed to be under the auspices of being good for this grouping. We don't know how detached is this person really. We can see their emotional clenching in their throat because they have no charm, if they have no charm. This is if you have a bad Venus in your chart and you don't have any emotional fulfillment, then you'll get fulfillment through telling everybody how to do it because this is how I learned it, and it's all gruff, and you might actually lose your 10th house a little bit. You might lose your activity in the world because you're being so gruff and so mean and so just uncharming. Now, again, what can a Capricorn do to reduce the egotism of the 8th house of the sun? Well, what we've been trying to describe and throughout these, I hope to God you guys can see me here good. What we've been describing throughout this whole process, throughout these videos, is that Taurus is in the 10th house from Leo, and anything from the 10th house of something provides the worldly stage upon which the karmas can be worked out. Our natural 10th house is the place upon which the karmas of our first house can be worked out, of our self. Now, you can take this rule for anything. I always like to use the example that the 10th house from the 7th house is the 4th house, which means that the field upon which the karmas of the 7th house can be, of our business relations can be worked out, is the 4th house of our emotional foundations. It's through our emotional foundations that we work out the 7th house of relating with others, because the 4th is the 10th from the 7th, okay? Now we have to consider in this context that the 5th, Taurus, is the 10th house from the 8th. These are both fixed signs. They relate to these kind of power struggles in this sort of way. So, this means that Taurus is the platform, the 5th house, the charm, the spirited expression. This is the house through which the karmas of the sun can be worked out, of this egotism. If you're a Capricorn and you don't want to seem so egotistical to all of your relations and your business associates, and you want it to seem nice and clean and not have that guttural throat lock of emotional and vulnerability, then you have to delve into how fulfilled you are in the constant expression that you employ through your 5th house, through Taurus, through your material abundance and your felt resources and your felt experience of material abundance. If you have material abundance and material resources, then what need do you have as a Capricorn to get that gritty, just like bitterness, to spew venom on those that are beneath you, and also secretly be embittered to the boss above you who has that above you? Ding, 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 waving the carrot. Come on, stupid little Capricorn. Come on, keep climbing. Oh, this guy just is such a dick, and, just I'm going to get there for the sake of it. All of that costs energy. All of that takes energy out of you. And all that bitterness is not abundant. What you should be doing in order to express your 8th house at the highest is to use your charm. And the arena for unfolding your charm is Taurus, for all of us, really. But for you, this 5th house playability and creative discernment and capacity to express your creative spirit, which is your 5th house, this is Taurus. And you lean on Taurus and Venus in order to develop the confidence through the security, the psychological foundation, and even resources and abundance through which you can reduce the egotism of your 8th house, Leo, and reduce your egotism of your leadership when it comes to being in groups and deciding that we need to do this for our group, or in deciding that I need to leave this group in order to go to a better group. If you have a good 5th house, then you can just explain it just charmingly. Hey guys, and also not only charmingly, but abundantly. So that if you have the financial resources in abundance, then you can break a contract in order to go to a better group by saying, hey guys, so, I've promised that we were going to go this far with all of this, but I can't, but thankfully I have this resource or this connection or this money that I can just kind of reimburse the fact that I thought that I was in the right direction, but I have to pull out of this group because it's not really fitting my intention to climb to the highest bid. So sorry about that, guys. You leave that group, you leave that job, but you can stay in your house, you can stay in where you are, and you can develop more resources in order to get that new job that can get you higher, because you have abundance, because you have resources. Now, what is it that would give the Capricorn this sense of abundance and this sense of resources? It's a well-instituted Venus. If your Venus is well-placed, if it's close to your 4th house, if it's, got good aspects from other planets, then everything that you do gives you a fulfillment, makes you feel like the spice of life is right on your tongue no matter what you do, and it draws abundance to you when you have that. It's just like a kind of Taurus is the nature of material abundance for all of us. And it's got like it's like The Secret, you know, the secret of abundance is like the mental intention and power or whatever. That whole thing. I digress. So, this all goes to say that the 10th from the 8th is that Taurus. So the arena through which you express and work out the karmas of that 8th house Leo, egotism, you can work that out through Taurus in the 5th house. Taurus relating at a deep level to your sexual relatability. How does an understanding of your inherent self-expression and creativity, it's the 5th house, provide a platform for the working out of the unstable 8th house sun karma? Your creative and ambitious relations of yourself as connected to something reliable and valuable. If you want to be reliable to others, valuable to others, but also like attractive to others, just others trusting that you've got the right method and mode, and that I want to come to you because your decision making in creative capacity feels confident, and I want to support you in that. In order to get that, your creative and ambitious sense of self gives value, skill, and resources towards these group projects which inherently relate to that field of values. So this partly goes to say that if you have a good Venus, then no matter what groups you involve yourself in, it's probably going to relate, it's going to give you self-fulfillment. It's going to relate to values that allow you to have your self-expression. For example, if you're a musician and you have the sun in the 8th house and you want to work with other people and you deeply have music in your bones and you love it so much, and you need to find some career where you can stand from the mountain and stand out. And so you decide to be an accountant. And in your music career, you're gritty because it's what you want to do, and you're a little bit spicy, but you're good and you're disciplined, and you have this thing with your band that's close to you, and you might not have as much problems with your band, but with your job, your actual career, and your thing that you're going for, there might be all kinds of bitterness because you as a musician don't relate to the world of accounting, and you don't give a damn about it. Right? That means that this group that you've involved yourself with, this organization, does not relate to your intrinsic values as a musician. And so you're wasting energy. How much more abundant would it be if you worked in a company that is fueled by music, or like as a musical educator or something of this nature? I kind of digress here, but the point is that if your Venus is well placed, then you're probably going to instinctively find ways of expressing your career, and you're going to involve yourselves with groups that involves your intrinsic values as a musician or as an artisan sculptor or as just a person who likes to organize and delegate in a certain field, whatever that field might be. The field will probably relate to an intrinsic set of values that you've been enjoying ever since puberty and beyond. Taurus is the time where we develop these recreational senses and hobbies. And not only that, but more pertinently, you will feel that you can get a group or some kind of project that relates to your intrinsic values if you've always had it. If you felt since you were young and since you were in puberty that everything that you do is abundant, that you can and should take advantage of the abundance of your gender, of your suave sense of being worthy, and your ability to be charming, and to feel charming, and to feel correct, and to confidently move forward in a way that you feel is going to help everybody out by what you do and how you perform. And what deeply gives you a deep sense of this at deep levels, as we've been talking about throughout this whole thing, what can really help to give you this sense of charm that will help your 5th lord, which is again connected to your 10th house. Libra and Taurus are connected. What gives you this charm that allows you to feel like you can find groups that relate to your intrinsic set of values. Something to deeply help you with that is your sexual relatability in private and personal matters with people close to you. Not only that, but your relationship to your creativity. Your capacity to say, you know what, I am a good creator and I can create something that is going to be good and worthy. And even if it doesn't turn out to be anything amazing, I just want to do it because look, lo and behold, this thing is just pouring out of me and I want to get on it. Whether it's dancing, whether it's learning how to speak well, or to the opposite gender especially. Your capacity to involve yourself with opportune business ventures, 8th house, Leo, depends on your ability to be unfixed in your way of creative inspiration, which means that you might also have to let go of old ways and familiar ways of creatively expressing your inspiration. It's a two-way thing here. You know, you might have involved yourself with a group which doesn't allow it, but Uranus and Taurus gives you an opportunity to say, you're already in this group, how can you find ways of enjoying it and working it out so that you do get a creative inspiration no matter what groups you've put yourself in? Because, you know, I mean, I would say if you have a good sun, and your sun is well placed, then you might do good at this finding a group thing. Now, Uranus and Taurus might be telling you that this is a good group that you're involved in. This is a good, solid place. But you need to redefine how you can get your creative inspiration through this group that you're in. But with Uranus and Taurus, that's really what it is. You're learning, the most important thing for you to be learning right now is how you can relate, how you can bring out the charm of your creative inspiration into whatever groups you've involved yourself with. And whatever you learn about the groups you're with now is ultimately going to teach you about how you can enjoy yourself in the long run. Because knowing you, if you're Saturn, you're probably not going to ditch the groups or the commitments that you've made. But you can, in this period, learn how you can garner more inspiration through the groups you've involved yourself within, through your personal life, through Taurus, through your sexual relatability, through your feeling of swagger, going on dates, and bringing like your nice fancy car or some kind of monetary thing, or just, you know, dressing well and having people ooh and ah wherever you go. And to see that develops the confidence that you're doing the right thing. If you don't have a good Venus, then you're not going to care about all that, and you'll get the dry, salty experience that we've talked about without having a good Venus. And if you don't have a good Venus, Uranus and Taurus might force you to find ways that are less salty to relate with people. You might go through the whole period not even thinking about it. Uranus and Taurus is a dumb note kind of for everybody. It might even just give you a bit of a sense of more creative inspiration, ways of finding the charm and the enjoyment of yourself. It might give you a little bit of that, but ultimately kind of be a dumb note. Depends on what Venus means to you as a Capricorn. It means a lot to you because it's your 5th lord and your 10th lord. But what does it mean to your, as your 5th and 10th lord? What does that mean to you as a Capricorn? Again, it's important. This is a good opportunity for you to relate to how your creative inspiration can work through whatever businesses that you're in. Particularly if Venus is your Atmakarika, though, or if you're in a Venus Mahadasha period, you might want to actually let go of some of the group pools that you've attached yourself to in order to dig deeper into how you can be more abundant in the world by valuing your own creative inspiration in any group that you find. So try to find a balance there. But again, if this is a really important transit for you, if Venus is important to you for some reason, then like if Venus is in your ascendant or your like 4th house in an angle, there's lots of ways to define significance. Then this period might be worth letting go of some groups for in order to do a little bit of self-searching, because self-searching, exploring, and experimenting with your own charm and creative inspiration will cause your actions to be easier, your life to not have so much drag and resistance. Now, when Uranus was in Aries, it would have been about 7 years ago, 2017-ish. Uranus in Aries was in your 4th house. This demanded that your worldly dealings come into alignment with your foundational needs. It's the 4th house. Might have had a desire to expand on how you relate to professions creatively. So, the whole time Uranus was in Aries, being in your 4th house, it was probably pushing you through a pure volitional energy it might have just pestered your emotional foundation. And this pestering of your emotional foundation in Aries might have caused you to lose possible business contracts for your 10th house, because your 10th house is Libra. Your 4th house is Aries. So as a Capricorn, you have a harder time relating to your 4th house, because Capricorn and Mars don't exactly get along. Saturn and Mars don't get along. Mars is like antagonistic to the purposes of what Saturn really represents, is this detached, objective, not willful, not egoic, not noble, not even noble. Capricorn is not about what's noble. Capricorn's about what's best in a hard, visceral, true way. But sometimes that's a positive thing. Like, what's really best except by what's best? I could think of some metaphor, but I should stick to the idea here that the whole time Uranus was in Aries, you were probably developing a sense through bumping your head against the world. Activity was being drawn to you, which would show you that you need to more firmly have a grip on your 4th house, on your emotional foundations. And as that was going on, you might have found some ways to get a grip on it. It's Mars, so it's a grip-getting phenomenon. Capricorn, for better or worse, kind of has to pull its emotional foundations into itself and work to develop the will to bring it to itself. In a sort of visceral way, constantly telling your lover, maybe like securing them financially, but also just like with a toughness that can be a little harsh. And you might have just found that the way that you deal with your emotional reality, it wastes energy because you're trying so hard to put all this will, this Mars Aries will, into your emotions, and it's just not working. What can I do? God, why does my woman just accept me for who I am? Or my husband, even for a woman, Capricorn. Why doesn't my husband just accept all these things that I do for him? Or for, like, why don't they just accept it? If, now that Uranus is in Taurus, you're going to find why that was so hard and what was lacking. And how you can attract the abundance in what you intrinsically are, so that your emotional foundations, you don't have to try so hard to keep them around you. Your people in your life who love you, who claim to love you. Your mother and father, they don't have to stick around. If you're really, really, really hard to them and you're just a dick and you don't relate to them in a real engaging way, then you're not going to relate to them, and they don't have to stick around. Sorry to say. And maybe they will, maybe they won't. But you might even just relate to them in a hard way so that you never enjoy them. Uranus and Taurus is now an opportunity for you to develop on why it is that you never respected your father's hard authoritarian authority, and how you can relate with them, sympathize, and see how you yourself can employ this hard daddy sort of like ruling or directing energy, but in a way that's benevolent, in a way that's like not trying to choke anything for the egotism's sake, but is just a benevolent fact of the father's leadership. If you can relate to that in your father, you can relate to it in yourself, and then others can relate to it in you. This now is an opportunity to understand whether you did that with your father, whether that worked out, why it didn't, and you can come to forgive it so that you can now develop that charm which would give you that same fling and non-egotism in all your group relationships. Same thing with your mother. You can develop on the sexual things that happen in puberty, the things that you didn't see in the happiness of your father and mother. If you had a good father and mother and they were happy and loving, then Uranus and Taurus is going to bring out the richness of that. How can I take advantage of the good Venus and good upbringing that I've had? That's always fun. It might even, that's its own thing. But if you don't have a good Venus, if you didn't have a good early life, if you didn't have a good time with puberty and with all of these things, and with your mother, then now's the time where you can develop the capacity to understand why it's useful and important and beautiful to have authority with no ego, but also to be receptive and listen. And at the same time, you can also learn how you can relate to others who want to support you, but don't want to be dependent on you. Like Capricorns can develop parasites in their emotional foundations because they just think that they relate to their lovers like they do to their mothers. And it's this annoying thing in my life that's like, okay, Mom, they grit their teeth and they come home for dinner and they say, thank you, the chicken's a little dry, but I guess I'll eat it or whatever. No thank you, no enjoyment or conversation. It's just like, I'm going to get through this so I can go and work on my hobbies because I hate my mother or whatever, and I hate that I have to lean on her and depend on her. If that's the relationship you had with your mother when you were young, it's probably the relationship you're going to have with your immediate lovers. And this is going to break the neurological program of Mr. Suave, Capricorn, 5th house Leo. This is an opportunity to work on all this psychological undergunk that could really deeply help you as a Capricorn, because it's your 5th house and it's also your 10th lord being Venus. And it can really help you get along in the world, help you express your creative inspiration right now. But it relates to sexual relatability. It relates to working out gender, what it means. The personal intimacy that you can develop in your personal and private sphere is going to be brought out to what you can express through your professional sphere. So it's in your best interest to take the best advantage of this time that you can, for your personal fulfillment, but also for the sake of what we all know you, Capricorn, really want, which is the strength of psyche to be able to give disciplined discernment in a way that people respect, just for the sake of it. And not because you have to have this tyrannical ego reigning on you, but because the Capricorn does know what he's talking about, so let's let them lead. They've never let us down before, and look at how this flick of the wrist, they have all this emotional fulfillment. They got abundance because they're doing well, and they've attracted this abundance. And now we can trust. Of course, we can trust them. Look at they got it in their hand. If you want that kind of cinchedness in your world, then now's a good time to take advantage of Taurus things, Venus things, and how you relate sexually in your private sphere, as relates to everything else in your life. Yes, I guess I should say, I usually just, okay, I'm done. But this is a live chat, so I'm just going to check for comments. We don't got no comments. For anybody watching, I like to do these things live. Feel free to drop a comment, question, and I'll speak to it when I can. And I always like to say, I already said, if Venus is your Mahadasha right now, or if Venus is your Atmakarika, this is a more deeply important time for you. And if not, then just take what can be used from this transit and rock and roll and have fun with it as Uranus moves on and goes into the next sphere of your life and everybody else's. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Thanks for watching. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Nice to see you today. My name is Dustin Cormier. This is How to Rock Astrology. We've been watching this episode on Uranus and Taurus. This first part of the episode has been kind of talking about what does it mean generationally, for all of us for this 7-year period. Now we are learning about what Uranus and Taurus means particularly to the individual chart of all the rising signs. And this is an Aquarius rising dealing with Uranus and Taurus. Welcome. So, as we've been talking about basically with all these things, I'm going to give you guys a little glimpse of some figures related to the nature of Aquarius in relationship to the rest of the signs of the zodiac. Can you guys see me? Yes, very good. So this diagram comes from Ryan Kurczak's Asheville Astrology's Astrology Apprenticeship Program, which I've been a part of for like 3 years. Kind of like getting to be almost finally finishing it. Sort of. I guess I'm technically only halfway through, but I digress. Here I am trying to combine these Western figures, such as Uranus, with the ancient Vedic gnosis of what the signs and planets mean between each other. Now this is Aquarius Lagna, Lagna meaning the rising sign. And this chart is trying to, if you can just bear with me, Westerners, to try and understand what's going on here. The A's in this chart signify what's called auspiciousness, meaning that the signs that have an A are ruled by a planet which naturally supports the agenda of the ascendant. Naturally, just based on what they are. The zodiac is the planets are kind of split in half, where you notice that air and earth signs are ruled by Mercury, Venus, and Saturn, whereas water and fire signs are ruled by Sun, Moon, Jupiter, and Mars. Now, here we have an air sign, which means that all the other air signs are going to be entwined to it, and that's a natural friendship there. So, Aquarius, Saturn, rules the ascendant here. Libra rules the 5th house. Is that right? I'm sorry. Libra rules the 9th house for Aquarius, and Gemini rules the 5th house. So we can see this little reading is meant to show, again, like what is the logic of defining the rising sign in the ancient Vedic sense. Jupiter, the Moon, and Mars are evil. Venus and Saturn are auspicious. And Mercury is said to give medium effects, which is kind of a funny thing. It's because Mercury rules the 5th as well as the 8th. So the 8th house factor gives some kind of instability with regards to what Mercury represents for Aquarius. But I digress. So this is just giving you a sense of what's being said here. So here we see that Aquarius is friendly, is the Lagna, is the rising sign. Taurus is a positive, is positive to Aquarius because Taurus rules the 10th house and Libra rules the 9th house. The 9th house is the most auspicious trine for any situation. So the fact that the 10th house is kind of like almost neutral. It's an angular house and it just attracts activity. And the 5th lord expresses a necessary, the 9th lord brings auspiciousness to this 10th lord. I see what I'm mixing up here. I'm sorry, folks. Taurus is actually the 4th house for an Aquarius. So Taurus rules the 4th and Libra rules the 9th, which means that Aquarius's role in life, 9th house, deeply relates to their capacity to feel at home, 4th house, Taurus. The role they find in the world relates to what they are at home. Aquarius is very much like this. They have a funny relationship with their 4th house. And we're going to kind of break all this down. So, essentially what we're looking at here is Aquarius is the 1st house, Taurus is the 4th house, and Leo is the 7th. Now, what I want to kind of show you before we talk about this, if you watched the start of our video, you would have known, you would have watched how we described that Uranus is kind of like this metaphysical energy, in this metaphysical intuition of human evolution and spiritual evolution. Whatever your karma is now, Uranus is the implication of how that can be best used in an evolutionary context that actually implies self-realization and reduces the obstructions to the infinite expression of energy that the sun represents. The sun is your present energy field, and it has infinite potential technically. In the Uranus sense, the sun has infinite potential, but your sun has a specific karma, and it has to express a certain dimension, a certain form. Uranus is the formless intuition of what your sun could be, of what you could be expressing. But you need to express what you are now while moving into the evolutionary edict. So, I've been saying for all these videos that Uranus is like the Native American wisdom, according to Isabel Hickey. The Native Americans said that the sun was actually a hole in the sky. Your sun is like a hole in the universe where energy is coming through the avatar of your karma. But Uranus is the sun that lies beyond that hole. Uranus being the infinite sense of absolute pure energy potential. And wherever your sun is, whatever it means to your chart, has to use Uranus to bring out the best of what the sun means to you. Because you are an Aquarius. The sun means something to everybody, but it means something in particular to every rising sign, and to you as an Aquarius. Now, what does it bring to you as an Aquarius? Well, the sun is your 7th house. Leo is your 7th house. So that means wherever the sun is in your chart, it's a necessary aspect of how you relate to others in the world. And the 7th lord is always very frustrating because it's opposite the 1st house, your natural identity, your natural way of expressing yourself. The 7th house says, how do I have to relate to others despite my desire to act in my own way? In the Leo case, how do I act as a leader in Aquarius's case? In Aquarius's case, the sun demands, how can you express leadership amongst others while still holding intrinsically to your sense of duty that has nothing to do with ego? How do you express leadership? Because Aquarius doesn't want to be egotistic. But this is the crippling factor, is that Aquarius often second guesses their own leadership, their own capacity to express an ambition towards their goals. Because they don't want it to look that way to other people. They want to look responsible and hard and dutiful and compassionate. Like they have the bigger way of being, man. You know, they put on their glasses and they say, everybody is cool. And by me saying that, it does kind of make me like cool because everybody agrees that, look, I'm right. You know, like we are all cool. The Aquarius just happens to be the one megaphone with the sunglasses that's being Leo. It's like Leo has to reach through the 7th and say, okay, nobody be egotistical in Leo, except for me doing it right now. Despite what's happening now, everybody chill out and be cool and work together towards a humanitarian collective goal. But then anyone could look at that and say, well, gee, you sure really grabbed the spotlight in order to announce that collective goal, didn't you, Mr. so-called cool and unassuming Aquarius? And the Aquarius doesn't, like, they hate that about themselves, that they bring about an egotism. They don't want to look egoic. They want to look savvy. They want to look like they're not trying too hard, that it's just grace and coolness is just pouring right out of them. But they have to. Aquarius, whether you're a woman or a man, you have to be able to relate with others in a way that gives you a sense of leadership and ambition for yourself, but also gives you something that Aquarius desires, which is to be looked at as a cog in a bigger wheel. So Leo and the sun is a tough thing for Aquarius to express, but Taurus in the 4th house is something that Aquarius has an easier time jiving with. So we can see here, of course, as is with any relationship, we're going to talk, so this is the reason why we talk so much about the sun with these Uranus transits, is that wherever the sun is what the goal of Uranus is really trying to permeate and to express. Now, Leo is your 7th house, but you have to understand that the 10th from any house provides the platform through which the karmas of that house can be worked out. The 10th from the 7th is the 4th. That means that we can't work out the karma that we deal with others until we first become detached and objective and completely experienced and understanding of our own emotional foundations. I'll give you the long and short of it right now for Aquarius, is that the only way that you can relate properly to others through your leadership, through your ambition, is to have a proper emotional foundation. Because it's your emotional foundation relates to your sexuality. Because Taurus, which is a sexual sign, it's an attractive abundance, it's ruled by Venus. The attraction of what you are is what attracts an emotional foundation. And if you can get a proper emotional foundation, if you have a good Taurus, if you can relate well to others just based on what you are, what you've always been since puberty. Taurus relates to puberty from 7 to 14. You've been doing something from that age, which is your way of kind of relating to the world outside of yourself. And that 4th house of Taurus is what your ability to relate with others stands on. Because if you can be satisfied in your emotional depths, then when you're dealing with your boss, he's just a boss. You don't need to get an emotional feeling that you are validated by the boss, because he has nothing to do with you. So when it comes to relating with the boss, you can put on your glasses and be cool and say, yeah, okay, boss, somebody needs to do this job, sling glasses on, I got this, baby, I'm the leader that you want to do that job. Because, and if the boss says, okay, Mr. Cool Aquarius, okay, so take your glasses off for a second because I need you to be serious. If you have an attitude that's like, what do you mean take these glasses off? What are you, my dad? What are you, my mom? That means that you didn't have a good 4th house through which you can work out family dynamics in a way that would not necessitate you to compensate for that lack of childhood psychology through your work. Your work has nothing to do with your psychology. But you need to use the depths of your psychology as a platform through which you can work out your relationships with others. That's what it means that the 10th house from anything is the world stage through which you work out karmas. In this case, we have Leo on the 7th house. Taurus is in the 10th house from Leo, which means that 7th house Leo, your 4th house Taurus is the 10th, is the platform through which your 7th house, Leo, your ambition, your leadership, can learn how to healthily express itself in a constant relationship between what you are and what the world demands of you. So, when you have Uranus in Taurus and you're in Aquarius rising, you have to consider, what does it mean that Taurus is the 10th from the 7th? Now this may seem confusing, but just bear with me here because I'm going to ring it in. This begs the question, what does it mean that Taurus is the 10th from the 7th? What does it mean that Taurus is the 4th house, is the 10th from the 7th? This begs the question, how does an experience of one's intrinsic emotional foundations through sexual relating, through the attractive abundance of what you've always been, it's the Taurus in the 4th house, what you've been through puberty, the neuro program that you've instilled through puberty that allows you to relate to your mom without you feeling like you are your dad who's being too pushy on your mom. You know, an Aquarius at first might have this standoffish attitude towards mom. And if you have a good Venus, then you'll get your mom might come along and say, now stop that. Or your dad might say, stop that, because your mother is an important dynamic of your psyche and she's a woman. Don't treat a woman. Don't treat anybody like that. And if you're an Aquarius and you don't have a good 4th house, then you might ignore that thing, that relationship, so that it might be hard for you to relate to a father and to a mother. It's hard for you to relate with someone putting authority on you and someone nurturing you, right? So it's the foundation that you've developed on through puberty is what allows you to express to other sexual relations that you can be a partner, you can be what you are, and you can nurture me. You can. Come on, mom, that I find in a girlfriend as a man. If you're a boy going through puberty, you can invite a woman to help nurture and support your emotional foundation without thinking that she's like your mom. She's this annoying the old bitch that I gotta carry around in order to be happy or whatever. Just like, I want to hang out with the boys, but Chelsea wants to go on a date, and I guess I have to. You shouldn't treat your relationships that way. And if you have a solid relationship with your own sexual chemistry, then you'll have the confidence to say, hey baby, I love you. You're my sweetheart. You're my doll. But I want to hang out with the boys this weekend. Are we okay with that? You need to communicate and say, is there anything I can do that would enrich that? I gotta turn off my fan for 1 sec here. These darn things in my house. So it's your 4th house. It's your foundation in childhood, your puberty psyche, that's going to give you the confidence to relate with your emotional foundation coming along, so that when you actually get a lover, as a Leo, you might as having Leo on the 7th, as an Aquarius, you might find a lover who allows you to express your soul or spirit by increasing your contacts and connections. Or you might find a lover who has this solar capacity to bring out in you the best of your potentials, and they might kind of demand it. They might kind of say, come on, this is what we do. And your lover might push you to be more than you are and to climb that mountain, to be that awesome, slick boss or employee who's developing things and getting better. And when your lover supports you in that sense, you can't think of them as mom or dad or anything other than somebody who has become a part of your emotional foundation, who you need to relate with honestly and earnestly. And if you relate with them purely because they help you get connections or they help you get farther in life, are you really building on your sexual fascination, on your ability to be abundant, to flick your wrist and say, for them to have faith in what you're what your cause is. You know, so you might have a moment with this lover who is all pushing you to develop your mutual empire or your mutual business contacts or this organization or whatever, and they might say to you, now, darling, we have to get up tomorrow or next week because we have to do this job for the Joneses, or, you know, like, we have to relate with this social group because that's what we've promised ourselves to do. If you're an Aquarius, you have to know when you can say, honestly, darling, thank you, but I need something in my life. I have an inspired moment that I need to build some kind of emotional foundation with. I need to start learning guitar, or like, you know, like, I need to find some kind of thing that gives me an emotional release. If they relate to your 4th house, if they relate to that this emotional thing that you're trying to express, then they will understand it. And they will say, okay, I'm relating with you not just as this person that helps us both do well, but also I do relate with you as an emotional foundation in a 4th house way. So when you communicate that you have emotional needs that you need, I am here to listen to them. And because I trust you. Now, this trust in partners and in everyone in your reality, this trust that they give you depends on your ability to be confident, to have self-worth. Love is not a charity game, as much as some people might think it is. And maybe it is for some people, but when love is about charity and just sort of like sympathy, then you do not develop on the natural givingness that is the nature of Venus, that is the nature of spirit, that is the nature of wholeness. If you don't have that capacity, then your sharing with people is just based on something that's kind of false. So that's why it takes this capacity to understand an intrinsic self-worth that is very based on sexuality. Now, you got to dig when I talk about all this, that if, you know, listen to the start of this video to hear what this sexuality means, but sexuality is an adjunct of abundance. Sexuality is a tool of abundance. Abundance is not a tool of sexuality. So when we talk about sexuality, you got to see the deeper metaphor here as what is it about what you inherently are, what you've been since childhood. Remember, this isn't Aries. Taurus is not Aries. Aries is more like what you are. At your inherent spiritual, it's just pure energy, really. Taurus finds a form for this pure potential and says, well, you know, I have to express, if I'm a man in a man's body, I might bring some great abundance by being a leader in a masculine way that draws out the best of my ambitions and causes me to make a leadership decision. And I want others to support me. In the same way that, like, you know, you could look at a girl and just give her the old, like, sunglasses down, what's up, baby, and then just walk away on your merry way, and then, like, you know, you go like this, and someone's like, ooh, wow, that whole thing was so hot. Look how confident they were. I bet I would feel nurtured just by getting on with this confident sexuality that's oozing from this person, whether you're a male or a female. For the male, it's this kind of flick of the wrist, sort of like, it's a very machismo, often masculine tendency. That being the case, you also have to, Uranus and Taurus is going to tell you how to not only absorb yourself, to take what you want for your own needs, but also to relate with others in a way that you don't compromise your flick of the wrist leadership confidence as a prepubescent teenage, just taking the world and, you know, like fucking the world and making her thank you for it. For the woman's side, it's the same thing. How do you take from the world for your own to fuck the world and make him thank you for it? It's the same thing for a woman. how do you make the world thank you for taking from them? It's through the magic of this Taurus, the second sign, which in your case is the 4th house. You use this confidence that you can take from the world and fuck it, and that it will enjoy your taking. How do you, can you manifest that reality? Well, how you do it is by understanding your own sexual psyche, what you've been since you were younger, and letting that be the foundation upon which you, in particular in Aquarius, develop your ability to express the sun's inspiration as a leader, to be seen as a leader in front of others for something that's bigger than just ego. There's always going to be a bit of ego involved in it. This is a fun part of the nature of Aquarius that Uranus and Taurus is teaching you, is how can you be a leader in the world while still listening to your emotional needs? How can your emotional foundations through sexual relating provide a platform, 10th housey platform, to work out the karmas of your 7th house, where you relate objectively with others in business and in merging and in marriage? Because it's your business capacity, and your business capacity is its own thing. Leo is its own thing for you. If your sun is good, then you're always going to be able to do business per se. What the 4th house is teaching you is how can you find a deep fulfillment by adjusting your 7th house, adjusting your business, adjusting your marriage so that it fits what you intrinsically are, have been, and want to be as a emotionally whole person. That's what Uranus and Taurus is teaching you right now. And this is going to bring a foundational awareness for years to come by expanding on the sexual identity and self-worth, intrinsic self-worth. How important is your self-worth in the way that you relate to the world? Because if you feel like your self-worth is being accommodated for, and it's being taken advantage of by you in your business, so that when you do any business, people just want to do it with you based on a confidence and a charisma that you've had since you were young. Or if you haven't had that charisma, then what do you need to develop that charisma? So that when you have this relations with other people and with businesses and with marriage, it's fulfilling and it's even easier and increases your Leo, your 7th house, your sun. This also may simultaneously open doors to an inspired capacity to relate with others as individuals and equals. So this gives inspiration, the sun, to treat all relationships for what they are, objectively, not just what they mean to us. For example, again, when you're dealing with your boss, you can deal with your boss as just your boss. You don't have to relate to them as your father or your mother or as an antagonist. You can just treat them as someone who's on top of you right now, and that's okay because you are on top of your own relationships, and you have a self-worth for everything underneath you. And you also have a self-worth for this person above you that has nothing to do with ego, nothing to do with psychological compensation on your part, just purely has to do with the fact that there's an opportunity where someone recognized that you have a skill that they want you to do. And you can treat that as that if you have a good 4th house. And if you have sexual abundance. Because why do you need to push around in an egoic way to feel like you're just as good as your boss if you have sexual competence pouring out of you like nothing? In fact, if you really look at it, if you have a strong 4th house as an Aquarius, your boss might feel uncomfortable that you are so figured out in your sexuality because you just roll your shoulders back and you just are quiet and content and it's just all good, baby. And then your boss sees this incredible suaveness in you and might even think like, gosh, is this person gonna upend me someday? I don't even feel that confident. This is how Aquarius does its bigger than itself, large organization, objectivity and detachment. It's the 4th house that brings a strength and detachment with regards to business and marriage and 7th house relationships. And I should say before we end this that Uranus in Aries, when Uranus was in Aries, it was in your 3rd house. This would have brought an exploration and an aggressive competition. You might have, for the last 7 years, before, since like probably about like 2011, 2012, you might have been exploring in the way of trying to find some kind of volition, some kind of expression, some kind of identity, the Aries sort of thing, which is coming through your 3rd house. And whatever exploring you did or have done, or just whatever reality pushed you to sense and to experience as to relates to what you are, you might have found that it begged the question of your sexual relatability. You might have found the whole time Uranus was in Aries that there are opportunities for you to explore and to expand, but which are draining. All this exploring is draining for you. It's like you're seeking you were seeking some kind of way to feel like you're on track with what you are and who you are. And now you've come to a place where you're starting to find that it's not about this nebulous sense of relating to an idea or some kind of abstraction. Now you've found that whatever you did find through your 3rd house exploring in the past 7 years, before Uranus is in Taurus, you might have found that you've come to enjoy music. You might have found that you've got skill in this arena. You're a good communicator, or you're good at doing YouTube videos, and all these different things and skills you've found in yourself. 3rd house skills. That's what the last cycle was part of the cycle was building on. Now you're coming to a place where you have to consider, what of all these skills that I've explored, which ones relate to my intrinsic set of values, my intrinsic sense of responsibility and security for who I felt comfortable and familiar with ever since I was like 10, 14, that area, years old. Because you might find that whatever you explored is begging the question of something more satisfying, more abundant, more enduring. Now you're coming to find that any old skill will do, but it's your relationship of your own sexual psyche with your exploration of your sexual psyche that brings the richness and an emotional foundation out of all those little crafts and hobbies that you were exploring in the last little bit. Now you're starting to integrate them in a way that can be solid pillars, solid foundations for finding emotional fulfillment for the rest of a long time. Not just the 7-year period of Uranus, but this is your 4th house. This is an angular house. So this is very important for you. And this period is going to bring you the richness of how you can relate to others and to your community, an individual in the private sphere, which is going to ultimately express in how others relate with you and how you can wheel and deal. It's not, Aquarius, it doesn't even care as much about its 10th house as much as it cares about kind of the 7th house for the Leo, the sun. The sun here expresses itself through the 7th house, through relating with others and dealing with contracts and immediate businesses, and having this group have an agenda and this group has an agenda. The Aquarius is the sun, the leader between all of that says, well, I have an unbiased opinion that is the leadership that everybody ought to trust. And if you don't have a good 4th house, you could still wrangle that trust, but it won't be from what you've done. Saturn. Aquarius is ruled by Saturn. So you might not even feel emotional fulfilled, but if you keep hacking at your job, people are going to trust your leadership in the 7th house way. But how long? For how long will that occur? How long can you keep that confidence juicely abundant if you don't feel like that in your private life? It might be really tough. You might have experiences where you go to be the person that everyone leans on, and you don't have the emotional wellness and security with which to hold it down, and you can break down. And that's a terrible thing if that happens, because you're supposed to have the relationship with someone who's detached, unemotional, and has the clarity to lead when everyone else is seeking to follow. If you break down in that moment, you could ruin your reputation for the rest of your life. And you won't if you take advantage of what Uranus and Taurus is trying to break through the emotional foundation of your entire life and trying to show you about your emotional foundation. And again, you know, if Taurus and Venus aren't that, they are actually. You're an Aquarius, so Libra is your 9th lord. So this wheeling and dealing, this relationship with people is hugely important to you. And you need, this is an important transit for you no matter what. Take advantage of it and learn how whatever crazy dealings kind of happen right now mean something to the way that you relate with people and how that can enrich the life that you lead as an Aquarius, as the leader for communities and groups who leads with detachment and objectivity and lack of ego. You know, you can get your ego by being the person who has no ego. And it's a weird quasi-ego thing, but that's what your sun means when it's in the 7th house. And that's okay, because you're going to get, you're allowed your ego fascination just as much as anybody does. But you have to there's a funny trick with Aquarius because you are opposite to the nature of the sun. So you have to express your sun through the opposite nature of the sun while still being the sun. A little bit weird, I understand. But consider all of this as to how the emotional foundation of Taurus can help you deal with all of that in a way that feels satisfying, so that you can do the no ego, I'm the leader thing, and people will see that, oh yes, there is no ego there. And that will help you to continue to do this thing that your sun loves to do as a 7th house relationship with the world and a constant state of leadership and perseverance in community organization. Your personal and private life are going to be the foundation for your ability to be detached. So take advantage now. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dustin Cormier, and you're watching How to Rock Astrology. Today we are talking about Uranus and Taurus, going through all the rising signs, defining what exactly it means to have Uranus and Taurus for each rising sign. This segment is going to be talking about Uranus and Taurus for a Pisces rising. So, what does it mean when Uranus is in Taurus and you are a Pisces rising? We're going to talk a little bit about it, and then we're going to talk about whether you have significant planets like your Atmakarka. Your Atmakarka is Venus, or if you're in the Mahadasha of Venus, how this will be kind of amplified. And check out the start of this video to learn more about that. Now, let's look at what it's like to have Uranus in Taurus for a Pisces. So this is a little, this diagram comes from Ryan Kurczak's Asheville Astrology, Vedic Astrology apprenticeship program. This is a southern chart, and it's basically showing you which planets which signs are friendly to each Lagna being the rising sign. So for a Pisces, we know it's a water sign, so it's likely to be good friends with Mars, the Moon, the Sun, and Jupiter. Here in this case, Taurus is kind of inauspicious, and it's kind of antagonistic to the agenda of Pisces ultimately. Pisces is ruled by Jupiter. It's more interested in culture It's more interested in timeless things relating to humanity. It can't exactly be bothered by relationships as much. The reason is because Venus rules the inauspicious third house, and also the rather the inauspicious eighth house. So Venus is a sensualizing, stimulating, but like unstable energy for Pisces. Relationships are this unstable thing that Pisces does have to use. The eighth house is tough for anybody, but this eighth lord of Venus is hungry in a third house way for Pisces rising, because Venus rules the third house and the eighth house, and these are both not like solid houses for any ascendant. So we know that Uranus is in kind of tough territory for a Pisces when it's in Taurus like this. You might have had an easier time when Uranus was in Aries, when you were developing on certain things. We're going to talk about it right now. Now, I always like to say before I get into this, it's very important. Check out the start of this video to get a bit of a sense of why we're talking about the Sun and Leo so succinctly for every rising sign. Essentially, Uranus is kind of like the deeper sun. Then Isabel Hickey, in her Cosmic Astrology, she talks about how the Native Americans had a mythology which considered that the sun was actually a hole in the sky, but the real sun laid beyond that sun, and they intuit the mythos was referring to Uranus. My room's kind of falling apart over here. This relates to Uranus. The deeper sun is Uranus, whereas the sun that we see in the sky is merely a hole in the sky. In our karma, it's our expressed current energy field doing what it can to manage the balance between inspiration, Uranus, and limitation, Saturn. So Leo, where Leo is in your chart, is going to use Uranus to bolster its essence and what it is. Now the Atma, the sun, is really the center of what you are. Uranus is this like intuition. It's a higher chakra evolutionary state, giving you an intuition of how you can best use your creative inspiration, your sun, without making it all fall apart completely. Uranus will come and dissolve things and say, okay, you've come this far, now do it all again. And the sun will say, well, you know, if you have a good sun, if Uranus comes and disrupts something, the sun will be like, that's okay, because I know that I'm playing this game of musical chairs, and I just enjoy the game. If I lose this one, I'll wait for the next game of musical chairs, because I know that it's the fun of the spirit and the nature of the spirit to embody through all these cycles of retribution and glory and falling. So, for a Pisces, Uranus is trying to help you express your sixth house. What's that all about? Well, for a Pisces rising, Leo is the sixth lord. Now, Ryan has given, in the sense of Pisces, we can see that the sun is not exactly the most auspicious thing. In fact, Brihat Parashara Horashastra tells us that even though the lord of Pisces, which is Jupiter and the sun are good friends, but we can see that for a Pisces, the sun rules the sixth house. The sixth house is an evil house. It's hungry energy, its habitual energy is ruled by Saturn. It's actually a need of ours to conscript ourselves to an every moment sense of disciplined activity. And this for you, Pisces, is an important thing for you because it's your ability to be discerning, to have routine hobbies which you enjoy and which effect and the inspiration of your soul, you need to have these in order to express your soul and to really get around the best that you can. So, with that being said, even though the sun is considered evil by Prihat Parashara Horashastra, the sun is a necessary evil for Pisces, because this is why Ryan puts it as neutral, because you can't really have the sun as being evil no matter what your rising sign is, because the sun is the center of all of us. So Pisces can just have a tough relationship with what it is to express the highest potentials of the sun, just because it's in the 6th house. It's a constance that can be annoying. It can be perceived as annoying. Now, the fact that Uranus is in Taurus is adding more of an annoying every moment insistence that you pay attention to what you are on Earth, which is, of course, also not Pisces' bag. Taurus is just an annoying thing for Pisces to have to deal with, because Pisces is always looking transcendentally beyond this thing in order to get to the next thing. And so it will serve and it will do things in a moment to get through, and even when it's tough, because the sun is in the 6th house. So Pisces is used to just like, okay, I guess I'll just do the suffering in order that I can get beyond this present state of awareness. This is Pisces' bag. You as a Pisces probably know this better than anybody. Now, what is happening here with Uranus and Taurus? Well, let's break it down this way, okay? How we've been saying it is that Taurus is in the 10th from the Leo is what we're looking at here, okay? Now, Taurus is in the 10th house from the 6th. I know that may seem confusing, but I'm going to rein it in. Leo is the 6th house, and Taurus is in the 10th from that house. Of course, we know that the 10th house from anything is a world stage upon which the karmas of the past can be applied and worked out based on your action and the reaction of a world of people who have been dealing on this field for a long time. It's the mountain of Capricorn, the 10th house. So we're talking about how the 10th house from anything shows how you develop on it. I hope you understand this. Like, for example, the 10th house from the 7th house is the 4th house. You can't develop your 7th house, relationships with others, until you develop the platform on which your relationship with others builds on. And that is, of course, your emotional foundation. This is just an example. Here we see that everyone has a 6th house, and the 10th house from everyone's 6th house is the 3rd house. This means that so Leo, the sun in a Pisces chart, your sun, relates very deeply to your capacity to keep acting in the world and to have a habit, a routine that grounds you in a routine. And this can be annoying. It's a heavy energy. How do you keep bouncing into it? You know, we often see Pisces, and they are so selfless because they can suffer through all these insufferable experiences. What keeps them bouncing back? What keeps them going into their derogatory sort of experiences where they can work underneath somebody and be a very good apprentice and be nice and accommodating and showing the, not meekness, but modesty through which they can eventually come to develop their own sun? How do they have the capacity to keep pushing into that? Well, how they develop on their 6th house is in the 3rd house. Because as we can see here, like I said, the 2nd house, Taurus is the 10th from the 6th house for a Pisces. So this means that the 3rd house is the 10th from the 6th. Anytime you want to develop your habits, you have to project an amusing and stimulating fascination for the habit that you're trying to develop. It's Gemini, third house, amusing, almost aggressive. There's a pushiness happening here. So Pisces is going to be pushed when Uranus is in Taurus. Uranus is in the third house. And this relates to sexuality and your ability to attract abundance based on what you are and what you have been since puberty. Now, if you're a Pisces, you might already be a somewhat non-binary person. If you're a man, you might have a feminine flair to you, a sensitivity, which you might not understand while you're going through puberty. Pisces often experiences this, where they don't feel like they have the ego or the capacity to confidently express this gender or that in a way which can effectively attract abundance or attract people or have people admire them. People admire Pisces for what they do and for their sensitivity and for their softness, but Pisces can get taken advantage of because of this softness for men and women. Now, it must be tough for you to be accommodating to everybody else, to be loving and accepting and emotionally so sensitive that you don't want to push anybody's buttons, to take that almost degrading sense and to say, despite the fact that I'm not getting an enjoyment for myself, nobody's supporting me, but I'm still going to keep doing my habitual things in my reality that build up to the expression of my spirit. Pisces does all these little things. Puts all these little bits of energy in their job. They go and they do it, and then they come home, and then they build a little hobby where they got something going for their lover, and the lover might not feel like they're super sexy to their lover, but they might have something going on that keeps their lover loving them and with them through this service. Now, if you keep doing all these little things on the outside to try to put you, and you have to put energy into them. Even if your lover comes to you and says, I love the poems and the way that you put the pictures in the house and the way that you organize the house and you're so easy to talk to and all these things. The lover might appreciate all the effort and sacrifices that you put into all these, and it might drown you. You might even get abundance for it. You might have a good 4th house and a good 7th house. And a good Venus, especially if you have a good Venus. If you have a good Venus here, this will make all of this much easier. But no matter what you are right now, if you have a good Venus, you'll probably find fulfillment through this emotional thing, through this serving that you do for other people in all these little ways. You will find emotional fulfillment. Uranus and Taurus right now is teaching you how you can come to enjoy your mind's appreciation for 3rd house things as relates to your sexuality, as relates to what you are and what you have been at a puberty hormonal structural level. And you right now might be inclined to experiment and express through the 3rd house the stimulating feeling that for once in your life you're doing some things that make you feel attractive. That's what Uranus and Taurus might be stimulating right now. And if you don't have a good Venus, or if you're hung up on your sexuality, then you might find that you want to be stimulated. You want to find stimulating things that cause you to keep in this game going, where you are working out the karma of having the enjoyment of 6th house routine building on your solar expression in life. It's because Pisces isn't really seen for its glory until kind of the end of things, when all the little sun things you've been doing build up to a glorious picture. Now, if you don't do all those little sun things, then you won't build up this picture of a glorious figure. And the only way that you will do all these little sun things is if you are stimulated by it, if it feels easy. Okay? And how it feels easy especially, is if you just have to flick your wrist and summon the support that is seeking you by your sexual relating. If you've been watching the rest of our video, we learn how integrating sexual fluidity and motion and relating in the confident way in the private sphere of your bedroom is going to reflect on your capacity to do it in the world publicly, and especially with regards to these little sun things that you do. Because if you deeply enjoy your sexual relating with any partner that you find, and you completely open up into all the ways that you would enjoy sexually relating with them, this is the platform, this is the 10th house from your 6th, from Leo. So this is the place upon which the karma of Leo in the sun is developed and gives you the capacity to enjoy doing these little bits of habitual activities that add up to a glorious picture in the end of things. Your bedroom activities, your enjoyment of that, your enjoyment of your expressed, stimulated sexuality. It's a 3rd house, Taurus. The 3rd house is ruled by Taurus. And so Taurus is teaching Pisces, Venus is teaching Pisces how to relate with others, and even to, indeed, to put yourself into groups. Venus is your 8th lord, which means that when you get into relationships, you're probably going to do it for a sense of stimulation, number one, but that stimulation is going to relate to a group venture full of other people who you're hoping are going to be something that is worth holding on to, an energy sphere outside yourself that is worth integrating. And if you have a good Venus, then you will surrender your energy at some level to a partner or to a business or to some bigger organization outside of yourself. And if you're smart and if you have a good Venus, you'll make sure that whatever you do for that group relates to your self-fulfillment and brings the attractive abundance of what you are. So whenever you're with any of your associates, they love you for what you are because you're a sexually attractive, not necessarily attractive, but an energetically attractive person who's confident that any role that you play, anything that you do is going to be received with attraction. I want to work with this person because they've so developed their role in this group. That's what happens if you have a good Venus. And if you don't have a good Venus, then you might surrender yourself to a marriage partner or a business or some kind of group that you can contribute to, and that group won't bring out the best of your own fulfillment. Now that you have Uranus in Taurus, you might have to learn, now that Uranus is in Taurus, you might have to see through your explorations, research Tantra, research your sexuality, and how you can best be tantric with your partner, or with any partner in the bedroom if you don't have a partner. And research and experience for yourself. This is like a time that's good for dating, good for finding your natural sexual expression in a way that will attract abundance for any group that you decide to interact with. Because group interactions have a deep way, again, because Taurus is the 10th house from Leo. So how you define yourself sexually, how you define your leadership, your capacity to express as a leader when you feel that your lover is attracted to your leadership in those moments, in those appropriate moments. Can you develop that so that when you decide to tell your lover, darling, I love you so much, and I know that we wanted to go on a date this weekend, but I have an opportunity to meet with a business associate who has a perfect thing for my creative career. And please trust that this is a good leadership for both of us. If you've developed your Taurus and your sexual identity, then your partner will know, oh yeah, baby, this is a new one. Okay, yeah, go for it. I trust you, darling. This is just like when we're in bed and you decide to do that sexy thing that you do that you've tried so many times, that you've always been, and whenever you do it, I know that it just attracts me and deeply enriches me. So whatever you choose to do in your career that's going to help you develop this sixth house capacity for constantly building this glorious picture, your partner will say, I trust your leadership in this moment. Plus also relationships are two ways. So if the lover looks at you in that moment and says, okay, darling, we can do that, but you have to level with me and call me and help me do our taxes that day because we promised to do that. You as the Pisces have to be able to blend all of those. But ultimately, this period is getting you to have people in your life who trust your self-direction at a deeply sexual and fulfilling level. Because it's this that's going to give you the abundance that doesn't make life feel so constricting. Just at the level of what you are. If you're a woman, this period could be teaching you how to be more assertive in your relationships when you need to be, while also not defeating the role that you've chosen in your relationships. It's the same thing for Pisces men, too. This period is teaching you how to be more assertive. Again, third house, Taurus, sexuality, to be more assertive in your relationships in a way that gives you the fulfillment that you need, but doesn't compromise the relationships that you've been trying to build. And it might, especially if Venus is very important to you. If Venus is your Atmakaraka, this period might undermine a lot of what you've built up through your relationships so far in your life. And if Venus is your Atmakaraka, you might want to listen to what this period is trying to teach you. Because if you just keep your heart closed now, you're missing out on an opportunity to develop something which is intrinsic to the deepest part of your soul fulfillment as a Venus person. And if you just say, oh, it doesn't matter that I feel unfulfilled in my immediate relationship with everybody because I have a job, I have a group that I've already submitted to, and I'm not that important anyway. And what do my needs and fulfillment have to do with this thing that I've committed to? You might come to find that you are responsible for the fact that your spirit is just as intrinsic to the energy grid of all consciousness as any other part of that grid. And if any part of that grid is a weak link, it doesn't matter how much you've committed and submitted to them, you won't have the energy field and the abundance with which to properly express the constant energy, the sixth house reliable energy, which you use to get where you want to get in life and to express yourself. So this is an important time for you, especially you use the internet. YouTube is a huge thing right now for sexuality, for interpersonal relationships and diagnosis, for tantra. There's so much information pouring out there right now because Uranus is in Taurus for all of us. So take advantage of it. Develop on that third house, because that is the platform upon which you will grasp the abundance and reduce the karmas that stop you from waking up and gloriously saying, oh boy, I can't wait to wake up tomorrow at 6 a.m, do my sweet little routine, do my meditation practice at this time, do my little bit of yoga, and now start hacking at my creative, artistic thing that I'm trying to do for everybody in this group that I'm in or in some higher organization. The third house, your intimate, every moment, erotic fascination, your sensations, your stimulating experiences based on what your hormones and your puberty structure has been since childhood. Develop an awareness of what it's been, what it should be, and what it shouldn't be. And this will make your sixth house that much more effective while we are in Uranus and Taurus. So use it constructively, but don't let it take over any relationships that are worth keeping, if they are. And you're a Pisces, likely you will commit to relationships in ways that are good. But just remember, look to your Venus. And if your Venus is really ill-placed, if you've got Saturn with Venus, or if Venus is in Leo or an enemy thing, then you might have been your whole life going for the glory of being seen with all these people without feeding the soul. And it's this feeding of the soul that really brings out the most of your 6th house, of your sun. So, yeah, sexual relatability engenders an abundance of mercurial energy, which you can employ in an enduring routine of creative actions. Leo, the 6th house. Also engenders, Uranus and Taurus period, also engenders an exploration, which leads to opportunities of skill and talent. Sexuality and enjoyment are needed to keep the person hacking away at their little responsibilities in life. And I should say, while Uranus was in Aries in your 2nd house, this may have pushed experiences relating to self-worth and sexuality for you. So you might have found, while Uranus was in Aries, for the whole 7-year period that it was there, you might have found that you've been pushed to develop on self-worth and sexuality. You wanted to start feeling like you found a pocket for yourself, which can attract abundance, because Aries is the 2nd house, so there's a bit of a trade-off here. While Uranus was in Aries, you're developing on the sense that you want to embody self-worth. The whole period probably made you feel that there's something that you're not embodying, something that you're not being, something unsatisfying in your life. Now, Uranus and Taurus is the opportunity for you to explore, 3rd house, what it is that your self-worth holds on. Taurus, 2nd house. Now you have the opportunity to explore it. Whew.